Welcome to Backstage Pass with Gail Davis, your invitation into the world of keynote speaking and event planning expertise. Join us as we pull back the curtain and dive into exclusive interviews with speaking industry experts. From seasoned speakers to master event planners, we're here to provide you with the ultimate backstage experience. Get ready to unlock valuable insights, tips, and strategies that will elevate your events and leave your audience inspired. Hello, and welcome to Backstage Pass. My name is Gail Davis, and I am your host. I am so looking forward to this conversation today with my friend and keynote speaker, Rashmi Airan. Rashmi she has just this great story that will kind of take your breath away and make you pause. She was very successful, very well educated, and a well-intentioned person. And her story shows how one decision can change everything. Rashmi went to Columbia Law School. She's a graduate of Columbia. She was a successful lawyer and investment banker who seemingly had it all until she found herself in prison. She has turned that experience into a very revealing keynote speech and a wonderful new book, which has just recently been released. Her work has brought her in front of organizations like Coca-Cola, Merrick, Hershey's, Cardinal Health. She's there at their request to help leaders understand the human factor behind decision-making and ethical failures. In a world that's moving faster than ever, Rashmi helps audiences recognize blind spots before they become costly mistakes. And then, more importantly, and my favorite part, she teaches us how to rise after a setback. So Rashmi, welcome, and I'm looking so forward into diving into this conversation.
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm so excited to be here and to dig deep. Let's go.
Well, your story begins at the height of what I think almost everybody would define as success. So can you take us back to that moment in your life and share how a single decision ultimately led to a completely different path?
Yeah, so to give your audience an idea of context, it was 2007. I had just opened my own real estate law practice. I had kids that were 2 and 3. So think sticky finger pizza on a Friday night. I have a husband at the time who's a firefighter. So he's working 24-hour shifts. We're like taking donuts to see him, at the fire station. And so I'm the major breadwinner. And in that context, there's so much pressure and speed and noise of just trying to make ends meet. I had a small little law practice. So there were about 5 people that worked for me. And I was hustling, literally going to every possible networking event that I could find, every organizational event. I was selling my services at the gym. And so when I got the chance to meet a real estate developer, I thought, oh my gosh, if I can land this one big client, that means financial stability, which would mean more time with my kids. And so that was my focus. I was so hungry to get this client. And really that was the moment, because I go to meet this client and essentially he was doing creative transactions. So you got to take yourselves back to 2007 before the crash. I live in South Florida, so the market was completely volatile and uncertain and insane. And I got wrapped into essentially justifying and believing that what this developer was asking me to do must be okay because I knew other developers were doing something similar. Where the moment is for me is that I chose, or I didn't intentionally ask any questions, get a second opinion, ask for help. And even though my gut was screaming, something didn't feel right, but I wanted this client so badly, I just kind of pushed down and silenced my inner voice. And that ultimately led to the demise of my entire career.
Shutting down that inner voice. I've never really heard you state it that way, but I think everybody can really relate to that moment. So I think that's important. Today, I feel like your work goes really far beyond sharing what happened. I mean, of course, that's detailed in the book, and you do talk about it in your keynote. But where along the way did you understand that the story was bigger? It's about blind spots. It's about decision making. It's about pressure. How did you how did you get there, and how does that impact the way you share the story to audiences?
It's such a great question. I think for those of us that are in the event industry, for a speaker, everyone has a story, I believe. We all come from someplace, we all go through struggle, we all go through these moments. And so, honestly, when I started, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just telling my story. And I did get a lot of traction. People were intrigued. Over the last few years, I have really deconstructed and understood that the story is just a story, and yes, it's interesting, but it's not about the story.
Mm.
What it's about is, how does my story impact the audiences that I'm in front of? And everyone, on Q&A and in other meetings would tell me, I want to know what exactly went wrong. What happened?
Yeah.
So I've been home from prison, Gail, about a decade now. And when I first came home, of course, I debriefed with family and things. But ultimately, in an effort to understand what went wrong, I started researching and studying and deconstructing my own thinking, my own self, because I really had to figure out what did go wrong. How did I let it happen? How did I fail so badly? And there was a bunch of psychology around decision making as well as behavioral science principles that I realized, oh my gosh, had I just known this stuff a decade ago, before I met this developer, maybe I would have made a different decision. And so over the last, I would say, year, I've always talked about resilience and empowerment and getting through struggle and coming out strong on the other side, because I am an example of that, right? I very much, I think who I am is a living example of that, of resilience. But when I dig deeper, it's more about resilient leadership. And to me, I think the modern leadership challenge today is that every leader is living in a world of pressure and speed and noise and uncertainty. And it's just here to stay. It's inevitable. And there's so many aspects of our lives that are forcing us to even go faster, like AI and technology. And so we think we have to go faster to keep up with our competition, to make our teams proud, to make our bosses proud, or just to do what we're supposed to do. And it's in those moments, if we don't make the time to pause, those blind spots creep in, the red flags we end up ignoring. So we have to have a process. I call it a mental process, the guardrails for our thoughts. We have to have a process to actually pause for a moment to make us actually better leaders. So I call it, I've created what I call the clarity loop. I wish I had had it, 15 years ago, because I know the decisions would have been different. And so we can walk through that if you want.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you tell us more about the clarity loop?
Yes. Okay. So the clarity loop is, after this decade of research, I kind of went through and I was like, okay, I dissected the blind spots, I dissected the red flags. And so what I wanted to do is, what are 4 questions we can ask ourselves in any moment, a couple minutes of pause each time, that will give us clarity. And within the question, all the scientific principles are embedded. So the first question is, what am I feeling right now? Sounds like an easy question, but I know when I take myself back to the moment I met the developer, what I was feeling was a lot of fear that I wasn't going to be able to survive, that I wasn't going to be able to provide for my family. And I was like struggling in desperation mode, hustling, trying to just make ends meet from one month to the next between payroll and kids and life. And so it was really fear of not being able to provide, not making my parents proud, not being successful, right? But really, I didn't see it as fear. I didn't even know to name it as an emotion. I saw it as ambition and success and strategy. If we don't name the emotion, we make decisions out of reaction. So naming the emotion is first. Second is, what story am I telling myself? So we get really good at creating a narrative in our head about, I have to do this because otherwise this will happen, right? In my case, I have to land the client, otherwise I won't be able to survive. It was a binary. And it was a non-existent binary, because there is no right or wrong, one or the other. There's all sorts of other options in between. But when you tell yourself a story, it basically gives you the ability to justify and rationalize and make assumptions. So that's those are those scientific principles that I break down in that question. The third is, what matters most here? And this is when we go from performance to alignment. And what I mean by that is, I was raised with incredible core values. I have an amazing family structure. I've always been this like really good person. And yet along the way, the core values became secondary to like performing and succeeding and making the money. And so there was like short-term gain versus the long-term of like, am I in alignment with what I believe? Integrity, ethics, all the things that I should have been paying attention to. There's a sense of moral awareness and moral judgment that comes into play with this question. And finally, the last question is most important: what choice can I own later?
Mm.
And this is where the concept of moral humility comes in. It's the recognition that I am capable of drift. And if I am capable of drift, I need a process to make better decisions. It's just owning and recognizing that none of us are immune to making bad decisions, and we have to own it.
I love those questions, and I love that concept of move from performance to alignment. I really, really, really like that. The word rise shows up in the title of your book. It shows up in the title of your keynotes. What does the word rise mean to you, and why have you really identified with that word?
There's so many reasons, Gail. So when I chose the title to the book, it's really like a double, triple entendre. Because, of course, as a defendant, when you're sitting in the courtroom and the judge walks in, the bailiff will say, all rise,
Oh, yeah.
right? So that's one. The second is my name actually means the light from the sun rise. So sun rises, rising has always been very spiritual for me. Then ultimately, as I began to do this work, as you know, I've worked on I have two separate frameworks. One is the rise framework, which is, I believe, how we rise through struggle and any moment in our lives that brings us down to our knees. And when we're in the darkness, how can we recognize that there's light on the other side? And so RISE stands for reframe, identify, surrender, and then evolve. So, and the book is structured in four parts around those four parts of the RISE framework. And then now over the last year, all this deconstructing I've done around decision making, what I believe is the only way for us to rise to clarity and rise in our leadership is by making better decisions, is by taking those moments to pause and have awareness. So I believe we rise by finding the clarity, by finding awareness. And so it's all sort of intertwined. I say we have to rise through it because you don't rise by going above. If you try to just go above or around anything, the decision, the moment, you're basically escaping. And when we escape, we're like not going through and learning the lesson I believe the universe wants us to learn from the moment. So we only can rise by going through whatever it is, through the hard decision, through the struggle, and feeling that pain in your bones. Like you have to go through it. It's not easy. I know, because I've been there, right? I had to lose everything. I had to leave my kids and go to prison. I've lost my sister to mental health. I've gone and experienced many life struggles, as all of you have. So it's not about if, it's when. It's just the inevitable truth we will all suffer in some way. And we have to figure out how to rise through those moments.
I think you just answered my next question, because I was going to ask you, what types of audiences do you feel your message resonates with? But you just said it so clearly. We all have been through things.
Clearly, yeah. So I have this very simple belief that every one of us is a leader in some way, whether it's at home, at work, in our communities. We are all leaders. And so I do believe that we are all, listen, we make thousands of decisions a day, right? We are all in these moments of constantly spitting out and trying to move on to the next thing and checking off our list. So I do believe that, yes, I have been, if you like on my website, I have 12 industry pages because I have worked with so many different industries. However, I will say that the industries where I tend to get hired in the most are legal, for obvious reasons, right? I was a lawyer, real estate because I was a real estate lawyer, and my family has been in real estate development for a long time. Healthcare, interestingly, because there's a lot of regulation in the healthcare space. And so there's a lot of overlap between what happened in my life and the challenges and the potential fraud or potential moments that can lead us astray. So healthcare, financial services, it was a bank fraud case. And I do believe that, again, financial services is a very highly regulated industry, and professionals in that space, whether it's insurance or banking or private wealth or hedge funds or venture capital. I mean, there's so many of these sort of subsets of financial services that I've done a lot of work in. Again, similarly, highly regulated, but also facing a lot of decisions all the time coming at them. And then I would say like the outside caveat or outside group that I always get booked in is women's groups because, I'm a mom who had to leave her children. My whole identity was being the achiever, the doer, the driven one, the capable one, the one who could figure it out. I mean, it was my entire identity, all of my self-worth and self-esteem. And you and I both know that most women, career focused women, or even women that are running their CEOs at home, we are all in that space of trying to achieve whatever that achievement looks like to us. And so my journey has really helped me understand that I am loved for who I am, not because of what I do and what I've accomplished. And that was such a powerful lesson and eye-opening experience for me to be able to recognize that and feel confident that I am worthy just for me. So women's groups.
I hired you when I was the learning chair for EO Dallas.
Yeah.
And you shared something with me that I think would be very interesting to all of our event planners. And that is the fact that your presentation qualifies for CE, continuing education credits. I think for people, perhaps I know you told me attorneys have to get a certain number of credits, and maybe some in accounting, maybe I can't remember if it transitions that way. But can you talk about that? Because that's just that's like icing on the cake that we can
Yeah.
offer that to people
So
in the audience.
yeah, so specifically, we can talk about lawyers first. Every
Okay.
state bar association has like a requirement. So typically, what I do is when a client invites me to come speak, like you did, I then apply to that state if I'm not already approved. It's like right now, I'm approved in Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Ohio, California, but the other states are doable. Honestly, it's like such a logistical thing. I just have to do it. So I kind of wait and then I rush it and I get it done. I do believe that accounting, real estate, they all have these requirements. So each one is something that I could apply to. I am a SHRM certified provider, if that's helpful to,
That's good to
HR
know.
groups
Yes.
and HR people. So yeah.
I just think that's so important. Again, my example in EO, we only had a handful of members who were attorneys, but
Mhm.
for them, what a bonus to come to an event that we're going to come to anyway,
Yeah.
but to check off the list that they got some of their CE credits. So,
Well, and like also, I'll tell you that my course satisfies the ethics CLE, and ethics is typically really boring. And so they're very hard. It's hard to get an ethics CLE that doesn't feel like it's a cookie cutter boring situation. So it's almost better because you get to hear like a really interesting, engaging presentation and you get ethics CLE.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's see if someone is listening today and maybe they're wrestling with a difficult decision. Maybe that inner voice is talking, or maybe they've had a setback, or they feel stuck. Is there one small step that, based on your experience, that you could recommend for someone that's wanting to move forward and rise from where they are today?
I believe that the first step is to pause and have a reframe. So in that moment of pause, and I'm not saying for like an hour, 30 minutes even, just like a couple of minutes, right? Have the recognition that you're feeling stuck or you feel like you're down on your knees and you don't know how to move forward, right? And so in that moment, if we take the moment to pause and reflect and then reframe whatever the thought is. So if we're going through a negative, how can we reframe that into a positive? I think you'll remember, Gail, that one of my uncles said to me right when I first got indicted and we went and we called like the entire Indian community to the house. One of my uncles said to me, Beti, which in Hindi means daughter, one day you'll realize this is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And when we're in the mud, it is so hard to believe that this can be happening for me. And whatever this is, I have lost loved ones, I have been to prison, I have lost my license, I have lost my right to vote, my I mean, I have lost all my money. I mean, I have lost and gone through so much pain and struggle that I promise you, whatever you're going through, I have experienced it. My mom had cancer, my best friend has had cancer. Like I have gone through so many of these moments where I'm constantly reminding myself, even when it feels 100% unfair, like why? Gosh, haven't I gone through so much already? And then I always remind myself, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And I think like, gosh, 10 years ago when I was going through this and I went to prison, I could have never imagined that event planners would call me onto stage and I get to, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people or 5,000 people, that I would get to impact people in a positive way. So you just never know. And so when we make the moment to pause and reflect and then reframe, that gives us the clarity to then apply the clarity loop and just like go through that decision-making process, or just recognize that we can rise. But it starts with the pause, right? It starts with, we're just in this fast-paced life, like, right? So we just have to figure out how to pause.
I love it. I love it so much. Is your book available on Amazon? Is that the best place for people to look for it?
Yes, it's available on Amazon. I narrate it on Audible. So if you want my voice, like sitting on the couch with me and you're hearing me, I narrate it. I'm told I'm pretty good at the narration. I don't know. Somebody was like, you should go narrate more books. I go, okay. I could also be an Audible narrator. But it is also
said that may be my route to go.
Yeah, it's easy because like I listen to books. That's how I consume books, is like at the gym, in the car, on airplanes. That's how I consume books. So it's available there, of course, but it's also available at your local bookstore might have it. You can ask for it. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, my publishers, Amplify Publishing, you can get it from them as well. So
perfect. Well, if you are an event planner listening and thinking this is exactly the kind of conversation our audience needs, please reach out to GDA Speakers. We would love to help you bring Rashmi into your group. Rashmi, thank you so much. I'm so excited about all the momentum and the deconstructing that you're doing and how you're really trying to bring so much wisdom to future generations. And I'm really excited to be a part of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gail. Loved it.
Thank you for joining us on Backstage Pass with Gail Davis. Tune in for more exclusive interviews and pro tips to elevate your events. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us. We'll catch you next time behind the curtain on Backstage Pass.